The great hall floated in the darkness of space, circling a dying star that pulsed with ancient light. Inside, 10,000 species gathered under a dome that showed the infinite galaxy beyond. This was the Galactic Assembly, the heart of civilization that had existed for longer than humanity had walked upright on Earth. Deho stood at the center platform, his simple gray suit looking plain among the scales, feathers, and energy forms around him. He was tall for a human, with tired eyes that had seen too many late nights preparing for this moment. Beside him, Dr. Yunji adjusted her glasses and pulled up the holographic displays. Her hand shook slightly, though she tried to hide it. They had practiced this presentation 100 times. 50 years ago, humanity had been invited to join the assembly as probationary members. 50 years of proving themselves, of following every rule, of contributing to every cause. Today was supposed to be the day they became full members. Today was supposed to be their triumph. Deho began to speak, his voice carried by translators to every corner of the massive chamber. He talked about the hospitals humans had built on alien worlds. He showed images of human doctors working 20-hour shifts during the plague on the outer colonies. Yunji displayed the mathematical formulas human scientists had contributed, equations that had solved problems the assembly had struggled with for centuries. He talked about the peace. 3 wars stopped because human mediators had sat at tables for months, drinking bitter tea and listening to both sides. He showed the treaty documents, signed in a dozen different scripts and symbols. The presentation lasted 30 minutes. Deho felt proud as he finished. Yunji smiled at him, hopeful. Then the laughter started. It began with the Vosh delegation, their reptilian bodies shaking with hissing sounds that the translators rendered as cruel amusement. The Threen ambassador, a massive insect-like being, clicked its mandibles in a pattern that meant mockery in their culture. One of the Keltorian elders stood up, his ancient body moving slowly. He had lived for 700 years and looked at Deho like a grandfather might look at a foolish child. "You speak of 50 years as if it means something," the Keltorian said, his voice deep and rumbling. "My youngest grandson has lived longer than your entire species has known space travel. You are infants playing at civilization." More laughter rippled through the chamber. Deho felt his jaw tighten. Beside him, Yunji's smile had frozen on her face. A Threen council member spoke next, its translated voice buzzing. "Your medical contributions are adequate for a lesser species, but you understand nothing of true biological complexity. You have one form, one body type. What can you teach races that have evolved beyond such limitations?" The Vosh representative slithered to the speaking platform. "You stopped 3 small regional disputes and expect gratitude? We have maintained peace across 10,000 worlds for millennia. Your contribution is like a drop of water in an ocean." On and on it went. Each species seemed eager to add their own criticism. Humans lived too short. Humans came from only one planet while other races had colonized hundreds. Humans had discovered faster than light travel embarrassingly late. Humans felt emotions through crude chemicals instead of enlightened telepathy. The worst came from the Archon High Chancellor. The being was pure energy, contained in a crystalline matrix that floated above the central podium. Its voice sounded like music and thunder at the same time. "Humanity has shown enthusiasm, which is commendable in the young. But membership in this assembly is not a participation trophy. It is earned through centuries of proven wisdom and capability. We have reviewed your application carefully." Deho felt hope flicker. Perhaps this was the moment. Perhaps the Archon would defend them. "We have decided that humanity may continue as probationary members for another century. Perhaps by then, your species will have matured sufficiently to join civilized company. Perhaps your grandchildren will be worthy of sitting among us as equals." The chamber erupted, not in outrage at the decision, but in agreement. thousands of beings making sounds of approval in thousands of different ways. The Archon had spoken, and the assembly concurred. Deho stood frozen. He had prepared for acceptance. He had even prepared for rejection. He had not prepared for this casual dismissal, this cosmic condescension. They were not rejecting humanity's application. They were patting humans on the head and telling them to come back when they grew up. Unji's datapad cracked in her grip. The sound was small, but in that moment, Deho heard it clearly. He looked at her and saw tears of anger in her eyes. The session ended. Delegates began filing out, already chatting about other matters. The human question was settled for another century. It was not important enough to discuss further. Deho and Unji walked back to their quarters in silence. The human delegation area was small, tucked away in a corner of the station where newer members stayed. Their senior ambassador, Minho, waited for them with the rest of the team. The old man's face was grave. "I watched the broadcast," Minho said quietly. The whole planet watched. Deho nodded. He felt numb. 50 years. 2 generations of humans had worked toward this goal. His parents had been part of the first probationary delegation. He had grown up in assembly space, learning alien languages, studying alien cultures. All to be ready for this day. "They laughed at us," Unji said, her voice shaking. "We showed them everything we have accomplished, and they laughed." Minho poured tea with steady hands. He had been a diplomat for 40 years, had negotiated the peace treaties Deho had presented. He had seen many things. But tonight, his hands shook just slightly as he handed out the cups. "There is an old human saying," Minho said. "When someone shows you who they are, believe them." The assembly has shown us exactly how they see humanity. Not as partners, not as equals, as children who should be grateful for the chance to serve. Deho drank his tea. It was bitter, but the warmth helped. An idea was forming in his mind, one that seemed crazy but also completely right. "What if we left?" he said quietly. The room went silent. Everyone stared at him. "What if we just walked away?" Deho continued, his voice growing stronger. "Withdrew our application. Pulled out all our people, our technology, our trade. Just left them alone. They would barely notice," one of the junior diplomats said. "We are too small." "Maybe," Deho said. "Or maybe they have gotten used to having us around more than they realize." Minho smiled slowly. It was not a happy smile, but it was satisfied. "I need to make a call to Earth, to the Secretary General. I think the Unity Council needs to hear a recommendation." That night, while the Assembly celebrated another successful session, while elder species congratulated themselves on maintaining standards, a message traveled to Earth at faster than light speeds. The message was simple. 3 sentences that would change the galaxy. They laughed at us. They do not see us as equals and never will. I recommend we withdraw immediately and completely. Within 48 hours, Earth's answer came back. It was one word: approved. The broadcast went out simultaneously across every human colony, every human ship, every human station in known space. Secretary General Minho appeared on screens in homes, offices, and public squares. He was 70 years old, his hair completely white, but his voice was steady and clear. "Citizens of Earth and the Terran colonies, members of the Galactic Assembly, I speak to you today about dignity. On Earth, people stopped in the streets to watch. On Mars, workers in the underground farms paused their machines. On the colony ships traveling between stars, crews gathered around display screens. 50 years ago, humanity accepted an invitation to join the Galactic Assembly as probationary members. We were grateful for the opportunity. We worked hard. We contributed our best minds, our resources, our hopes. Yesterday, Our delegation presented our case for full membership. The assembly's response was laughter. Minho paused. Across human space, people felt the anger in that pause. We offered partnership. We received mockery. We demonstrated our worth. We were told to come back in another century, perhaps when our grandchildren had grown up enough to deserve respect. The assembly has made their position clear. They do not see humans as equals. They see us as children at best, servants at worst. On the assembly station, alien delegates began tuning into the broadcast. The Vosh ambassador hissed in annoyance. This was not proper diplomatic protocol. Therefore, effective immediately, humanity withdraws from the Galactic Assembly. All human personnel will return home. All technology sharing agreements are terminated. All trade contracts are void. All research collaborations end today. The assembly has existed for 10,000 years without us. They will continue just fine. The broadcast ended. For a moment, there was silence across human space. Then the cheering started. Within hours, the exodus began. Dr. Subin had been working on the Threen homeworld for 3 years. The plague had killed millions of the insect people, and she had been leading a team trying to find a cure. They were close, maybe 6 months away from a breakthrough. Her Threen assistant, a young scientist named Clickfar, found her packing her equipment. "You cannot leave now," Clickfar buzzed frantically. "We are so close to the answer." Subin looked at her friend sadly. "I am sorry. I truly am. But the order is absolute. All humans come home, but my people are dying. I know, and I wanted to save them. But my government has made a decision, and I agree with it." The assembly had a chance to treat us with respect. They chose mockery instead. She left her notes, her samples, her equipment. But she took the key formulas with her. Those belonged to human research, funded by human resources. Clickfar watched the shuttle leave and felt the first touch of real fear. Across the galaxy, similar scenes played out. Captain Hyunwoo commanded the peacekeeping fleet on the Kelturian-Vosh border. For 30 years, human ships had patrolled the disputed zone, preventing the two species from restarting their ancient war. Both sides hated each other, but they respected the human mediators. When Hyunwoo received the withdrawal order, he called both sides for a final meeting. "We are leaving," he told them simply. "Humanity is withdrawing from assembly space. You two will need to work out your differences without us." The Keltorian general looked shocked. "You cannot abandon your post. The treaty requires neutral peacekeepers." "The treaty was with the assembly," Hyunwoo replied. "We are no longer members. Find someone else." "There is no one else," the Vosh commander hissed. "No other species is trusted by both sides." Hyunwoo shrugged. "That sounds like a problem for the assembly to solve. We were told yesterday that our contributions are insignificant. Surely our absence will be equally insignificant." The peacekeeping fleet departed the next day. Within a week, the first shots were fired across the border. The economic impact hit faster than anyone expected. Human agricultural colonies had been supplying food to 40% of assembly worlds. Human transport companies moved goods through the major shipping lanes. Human manufacturers produced everything from basic tools to advanced electronics. All of it stopped. Cargo ships turned around mid-flight, dumping their loads at the nearest assembly port and heading home. Trade stations that relied on human goods suddenly had empty shelves. Prices began to rise. On the research station orbiting the neutron star KEF-7, Dr. Ji-won was working on the most important project of her career. The quantum fold drive could revolutionize space travel, cutting journey times by 90%. She was collaborating with scientists from 8 different species. When the withdrawal order came, she called a meeting. "I am leaving today," she told them. "All my research, all my equations, everything I have contributed to this project, comes with me. The arcane scientist, a being of pure thought, pulsed with confusion. But this research belongs to all of us. It is a collaborative effort. No, Jiwan said firmly. The collaborative parts stay. The work I did alone, the breakthroughs I made, those are human discoveries. If the assembly wants them, they can ask nicely and treat us with respect. This is blackmail. The Archon accused G1 laughed, but there was no humor in it. This is consequences. You wanted to see what the galaxy looks like without human contributions. Now you get to find out. She took everything. The quantum equations, the fold calculations, the breakthrough theories that had taken her 10 years to develop. The project collapsed within days. Back on Earth, Minho addressed the Unity Council. Representatives from all 12 human colony systems had gathered, some in person, others via hologram. They will try to convince us to return, Minho said. They will offer small concessions. Better quarters at the assembly station. Maybe a minor position on some committee. We must be strong. We must refuse everything unless they offer full membership with complete equality. What if they never offer? Asked the Mars representative. Then we build our own future, Minho replied. We have 12 colony systems. We have the resources, the technology, the people. We can thrive without them. The representative from the Titan colony spoke up. The Mirathi have already sent a message. They want to negotiate continued trade. Refuse, Minho said flatly. We trade only among ourselves until the assembly changes its position. No exceptions. The vote was unanimous. 3 months passed. The assembly began to notice the problems. Food shortages appeared on 17 worlds. The Threne plague spread to 3 neighboring species because no one could replicate Dr. Sabine's work. The Keltorian-Vosh border conflict escalated to full battles. The major shipping lanes started having accidents because the traffic control algorithms, designed by humans, were no longer maintained. The Mirathi ambassador requested an emergency session. Her name was Kel, and she was one of the few who had voted against mocking humanity. We have made a grave error, Kel told the assembly. 60% of our medical supplies came from human sources. 40% of our food. The humans were not just participants in our civilization. They were holding up crucial parts of it. The Vosh ambassador dismissed her concerns. Temporary inconvenience. We will adapt. The Archon Chancellor agreed. The assembly survived for 10,000 years before humanity appeared. We will survive their petulant departure. But Kel noticed something the others did not. The Archon's voice lacked its usual certainty. 6 months after the withdrawal, the Mirathi sent a secret delegation to human space. 3 ships approached the border of the Terran sphere, the new name for human territory. They were met by Captain Hyonwoo's fleet. We request permission to negotiate, the Mirathi ambassador transmitted. Request denied, Hyonwoo replied. All official contact must go through the assembly. Since we are not members, we have nothing to discuss. We wish to apologize. Apologies are nice. They do not change policy. The assembly's position was clear. We are not worthy of civilized company. We are simply honoring your wishes by staying away. The Mirathi ships turned back. Ambassador Kel reported the failure to her government. For the first time in her long life, she felt genuine fear. Not for herself, but for the entire assembly. Because while the assembly struggled, humanity was thriving. Reports filtered back through neutral traders. The Terran sphere had expanded to 20 systems. Without needing to follow assembly regulations, human innovation had accelerated. New technologies appeared monthly. The quantum fold drive was completed, but kept secret. Agricultural breakthroughs eliminated food scarcity across all human worlds. And most disturbing to the elder species, humans seemed happy. They were not suffering from isolation. They were celebrating freedom. In the assembly hall, the Archon Chancellor made a decree. We will not beg primitives for help. We are the civilized galaxy. Solutions will be found among our own. But late at night, in the private chambers, where even energy beings could be alone, the Chancellor wondered if pride had led them all to ruin. 1 year had passed since humanity walked away from the Galactic Assembly. Ambassador Soman sat in her office on Earth, looking at the stack of messages from assembly species. 73 requests for communication in the past month alone. She had answered none of them. Soman was younger than the previous diplomatic team, only 40 years old, but she had been chosen specifically for this role. She was known for being polite, but absolutely firm. The perfect person to maintain the silence. Another message appeared on her screen. This one from the Keltorian government, marked urgent. She archived it without reading. They were all marked urgent now. Her assistant, a young man named Junho, knocked on her door. The Mirathi are asking again. They say they will agree to any terms for a meeting. No, Soman said simply. They sound desperate. Good. Let them feel what desperation is like. We felt it when they laughed at us. Junho nodded and left. Soman returned to her real work, reviewing the latest reports from the Terran sphere. 21 colony systems now. Population growth steady. Economic indicators all positive. Cultural programs flourishing. Humanity was not just surviving without the assembly. They were thriving. The galaxy was learning what true absence meant. On the Keltorian Vosh border, the war had consumed 17 star systems. Billions were dead. Entire planets were burned. Both sides kept fighting because neither would back down. And there was no one left to mediate. The Keltorian general, who had once dismissed, Captain Himbu, stood in the ruins of a colony that had held 5 million people. Now it held only ash and bones. He sent another message to the assembly, begging them to bring back the human peacekeepers. The message joined thousands of others. All ignored by humanity. All debated endlessly by the assembly. The Threne Plague had become a pandemic. It jumped species, mutating as it spread. 6 different races were now infected. The mortality rate climbed every month. Medical teams from other species tried to continue Dr. Sabin's work, but they could not understand her breakthrough. The key formulas were missing. Taken back to Earth. Click-far. The young Threne scientist who had worked with Subin lay dying in a hospital bed. The disease had finally caught up with him. With his last strength, he sent a message to Earth, addressed to Dr. Subin. I understand why you left. I do not blame you. But please, if you have any mercy, send the cure. My people are dying. I am dying. We were wrong to mock you. Please. The message was delivered to Sabin's laboratory on Mars. She read it 3 times, tears running down her face. Then she filed it away with the others. She had received hundreds of similar messages. Each one hurt. Each one she had to ignore. Because this was not about one person's mercy. This was about an entire species' dignity. The assembly's economy was in free fall. Human manufacturing had provided 30% of all goods in civilized space. Human agriculture fed dozens of worlds. Human transport companies had run the most efficient shipping networks. All of it was gone. Unemployment rose on 70 assembly worlds. Food prices increased by 300% in 1 year. Luxury goods became impossible to find. Basic necessities were rationed on planets that had not seen rationing in centuries. The assembly passed emergency economic measures. They tried to fill the gaps with their own industries. But it was not enough. The infrastructure had relied on human participation more than anyone had realized. A major shipping lane collapsed when the traffic control system failed. Without the human-designed algorithms, nobody could manage the complex flow of thousands of ships. 300 vessels collided in one catastrophic week. The lane had to be closed completely. Trade between the outer and inner regions became nearly impossible. The Mirathi economy was hit hardest. They had relied on human medical supplies for 60% of their needs. Their people were not dying, but they were suffering. Diseases that had been easily treated were now serious problems. Hospitals were overwhelmed. Ambassador Kell tried everything. She sent personal messages to every human diplomat she had ever met. She offered trade deals, technology exchanges, formal apologies. Everything was met with silence. Finally, she sent a message to Ambassador Soman with a simple question. "What will it take for you to talk to us?" The response came back within an hour. It was the first reply humanity had sent to any assembly communication in 12 months. The assembly must formally apologize and offer full membership with complete equality. Nothing less will even start a conversation. Kell brought this to the Assembly Council. The elder species refused. "We do not apologize to lesser beings," the Archon Chancellor declared. "Then we will continue to suffer," Kell replied. "And the suffering will only get worse." She was right. Every month brought new disasters. The research station where Dr. G1 had worked on the quantum fold drive was abandoned. Without her equations, the project was impossible to continue. The 8 other species involved tried to reconstruct her work from memory and old notes. They failed completely. Meanwhile, intelligence reports suggested that humanity had completed the drive. Human ships were now traveling between their colonies in a fraction of the time it took anyone else. The Terran sphere was expanding rapidly. Cleaning systems the Assembly had ignored because they were too far away to be useful. With the quantum fold drive, distance no longer mattered to humans. Agricultural scientist Taeon had developed something revolutionary. Self-sustaining biospheres that could turn even the harshest planet into a garden world within 5 years. The technology used principles no other species had discovered. 30 new human colonies were being established using this technology. Worlds that the Assembly had written off as uninhabitable were becoming human homes. The gap between humanity and the Assembly was growing wider every day. On Earth, the arts were experiencing a golden age. For 50 years, human culture had been measured against alien standards. Human music was compared to Keltorian symphonies. Human literature was judged against Threne poetry. Human visual arts were found lacking next to Archon energy sculptures. Now, free from that constant comparison, human creativity exploded. New forms of music emerged. Writers explored ideas that would have been dismissed as too primitive by Assembly critics. Artists created works that celebrated human experience without apology. The cultural renaissance was broadcast across human space, and it leaked into Assembly territory through neutral traders. Young members of other species watched human shows, listened to human music, read human books. They saw a civilization that was confident, creative, and happy. The contrast with their own struggling societies was painful. 5 years after the withdrawal, the Mirathi made a desperate move. They convinced a coalition of younger species to join them in confronting the elder races. The emergency assembly session was chaotic. The younger species, led by Ambassador Kell, presented their case with evidence and data. "We're dying," Kell said flatly. "Our economies are collapsing. Our people are suffering. We have wars we cannot stop, plagues we cannot cure, and problems we cannot solve. And all of it traces back to one decision. We mocked humanity. We laughed at them. We treated them with contempt, and now we are paying the price." The Vosh representative tried to interrupt, but Kell's voice rose. The humans were not perfect. They were young, sometimes clumsy, often different from us. But they were earnest. They worked hard. They contributed far more than we acknowledged. They asked for nothing except respect and we gave them contempt instead. She displayed the statistics. The number of dead in the HFY War. The mortality rates from the Threen Plague. The economic losses. The failed projects. The abandoned research. 5 years of consequences, all laid out in undeniable data. I move that we formally apologize to humanity and invite them to return as full members with complete equality. Not because we are generous, but because we need them. And because it is right. The debate lasted 3 days. The elder species fought against it. The Archon Chancellor called it humiliating. The Vosh called it weakness. The ancient Keltorians said they had never apologized to anyone in 10,000 years of history. But the younger species had the numbers. And they had the truth. The vote came. 10,847 species voted yes. 3,210 voted no. 1,892 abstained. The motion passed. Ambassador Kel was chosen to lead the delegation to Earth. She accepted with relief and terror. Relief that action was finally being taken. Terror that it might be too late. The delegation included representatives from every major species. Even the Archons sent a sub-chancellor, though the High Chancellor refused to come personally. Their ships approached Earth's orbit 1 week later. They were met by a defense fleet that made them stop and wait. For 6 hours, they sat at the border while humanity decided whether to let them through. Finally, clearance came. But not to land on Earth. They were directed to a human station in high orbit. The symbolism was clear. The assembly came to humanity, not the other way around. Ambassador Soman met them in a simple conference room. No grand hall. No ceremony. Just a table and chairs. Secretary General Minho was there too, now 75 years old and moving slowly. But his eyes were still sharp. You asked for a meeting, Minho said. We're listening. Ambassador Kel stood before the humans and felt something she had rarely experienced in her long life. Shame. The conference room was plain, almost bare. No decorations, no comfort. Just a table, chairs, and the weight of 5 years of consequences. Secretary General Minho sat across from her, his old face showing nothing. Ambassador Soman stood beside him, arms crossed. Behind Kel, the assembly delegation filled the room. Representatives from dozens of species, all silent, all waiting. We come to apologize, Kel began. Do you? Minho's voice was quiet but hard. Or do you come because you need us? The question hung in the air. Kel felt the other delegates shift uncomfortably behind her. But she had not come this far to lie. Both, she admitted. We need you desperately. Our civilization is falling apart. But we also owe you an apology that has nothing to do with our needs. We were wrong. Completely, utterly wrong. She activated a holographic display. Images appeared above the table. The Keltorian Vosh war zone. 43 star systems consumed by conflict. Planets reduced to radioactive waste. Refugee camps holding billions of displaced people. This is what happened when your peacekeepers left, Kel said. Both sides kept asking for you to return. Both sides trusted you. No one else could fill that role. The war has killed 17 billion people so far. Minho's expression did not change, but Soman looked away from the images. Kel changed the display. Now it showed hospitals overflowing with the sick. The Threen Plague victims, their bodies twisted by disease. Other species infected by the mutation, dying in quarantine. This is what happened when Dr. Subin left, Kel continued. We tried to continue her work. We failed. The plague has spread to 6 species now. The death toll is in the billions. We are facing the extinction of the Threen people within 10 years if we cannot find a cure. Another image. Economic charts showing the collapse. Unemployment rising. Poverty returning to worlds that had eliminated it centuries ago. food shortages, infrastructure failures. This is what happened when human trade stopped, when human manufacturing ended, when human agriculture withdrew. We did not realize how much of our civilization rested on your contributions. We did not want to realize it. Kel turned off the display and looked directly at Minho. For 5 years, we have suffered. Every day, more people die. Every day, our civilization crumbles a little more. And every day, we receive reports that humanity is thriving. You have 21 colony systems now. Your technology has advanced beyond ours in several fields. Your people are happy, prosperous, creative. You do not need us at all. No, Minho agreed. We do not. The Archon Sub-Chancellor spoke for the first time, its voice like crystal bells. Then why are you here? Why did you agree to this meeting? Soman answered. Because people are dying. And regardless of what the Assembly thinks of us, we do not stand by and watch people die when we can help. So you will help us? Kel felt hope flicker. Maybe, Minho said. But understand this clearly. We are not your servants. We are not your children. We are not grateful probationary members hoping for your approval. If we help, it will be as equals. Full equals. Nothing less. The Vosh representative hissed angrily. You dare make demands when we come asking for help. Minho smiled, but it was cold. Yes, we dare. You came because you need us. We are here because it is the right thing to do. But we will not return to assembly that treats us as lesser beings. Never again. Kel raised her hand, silencing the Vosh delegate before he could speak again. We understand. The Assembly has voted to offer you full membership with complete equality. We also wish to propose a new charter, a commitment to mutual respect across all species. Tell me about this charter, Soman said. Kel pulled up another document. It is based on principles that you, Ambassador Soman, proposed 3 years ago during a trade negotiation with the Mirathi. You called it the Dignity Accords. Soman looked surprised. You kept that? Some of us did. Some of us knew you were right even then. The charter makes mockery based on biological differences a sanctionable offense. It establishes equal representation for all member species, regardless of age or origin. It protects the rights of younger civilizations against the prejudices of older ones. Minho leaned forward. And the elder species agreed to this? Not all of them, Kel admitted. The vote was close, but enough voted yes. Enough recognized that our old ways led us to this disaster. The Archon High Chancellor? Soman asked. Did they vote yes? The Archon Sub-Chancellor pulsed with embarrassment. The High Chancellor voted no and has refused to participate in this delegation. I come in my own capacity, representing those of my people who recognize our error. For the first time, Minho's expression softened slightly. That took courage. It took facing the truth, the Archon replied. We energy beings pride ourselves on logic and wisdom, but we let arrogance blind us to both. You were right to leave. We deserved your absence. Silence filled the room. The weight of 5 years, of billions of deaths, of pride broken and lessons learned, pressed down on everyone. Finally, Minho spoke. We need to discuss this with our government. This is not a decision we can make alone. We understand, Kel said. But please, I must ask. The plague. Is there any chance that Dr. Subin could share her cure? Even if you reject everything else, could you save the Threen? Minho stood slowly, his old bones creaking. I will ask her, but I make no promises. Dr. Subin was personally close to several Threen scientists. She watched them die while we maintained the silence. It hurt her deeply. 3 days later, the Unity Council met on Earth. Every human colony system sent representatives. The session was broadcast live across all human space. Minho presented the Assembly's offer. Full membership. The Dignity Accords. Formal apology. Everything humanity had asked for. The debate was fierce. Many humans wanted to reject it. Let the Assembly suffer longer. Make them beg more. The anger from 5 years ago had not completely faded, but others argued differently. Akos argued differently. Asoskos had not completely faded, but others argued differently. Asos agadazanadensfidenary. Assumus is a diusintin, but Adams var. Representative from the Titan colony stood up. My daughter is a doctor. Every day, she sees the reports from Assembly space. The plague deaths. The war casualties. She cannot sleep at night knowing she can help and does not. Is that who we want to be? People who let others suffer to make a point? The Mars representative countered. They laughed at us. They treated us like children. Why should we rush to save them? Because we are better than they are, the Titan representative replied. That is the point. We do not help them because they deserve it. We help them because it is right. Because when someone is drowning, you throw them a rope. You do not lecture them about swimming lessons first. The vote took 2 days. In the end, it passed. Humanity would return to the Assembly. But on their terms. Minho sent the response to Ambassador Kell. The message was simple but firm. Humanity accepts the Assembly's apology and the offer of full membership. We will return immediately to provide humanitarian aid. Dr. Subin and her team will go to the Threen homeworld to stop the plague. Our peacekeepers will return to the Keltorian-Vosh border. Our trade and manufacturing will resume. Kel felt relief wash over her as she read. But then she reached the next paragraph. However, our return comes with conditions that are non-negotiable. First, humanity receives 3 permanent seats on the Security Council. Second, the Dignity Accords must be ratified by all member species within 6 months. Third, any species that refuses to ratify the Accords will be expelled from the Assembly. Fourth, the Archon High Chancellor must resign. The last condition caused an uproar. The Archon had led the Assembly for 2,000 years. The position was supposed to be lifetime, but Kell looked at the Archon's sub-chancellor, who read the message and simply nodded. It is just, the Archon said. The High Chancellor led us into this disaster through pride and arrogance. Let them step down. Let new leadership emerge. 2 weeks later, the Archon High Chancellor resigned. The announcement was brief, and for an energy being capable of beautiful language, remarkably plain. I have failed the Assembly and failed my oath to serve all species with wisdom. I step down immediately. May my successor learn from my mistakes. Dr. Subin landed on the Threen homeworld with a medical team of 200 specialists. Clickfar was still alive, barely, kept in stasis in a military hospital. She went to him first. I am sorry I took so long, she whispered to his unconscious form. I am sorry I had to leave. But I am here now. Within 3 months, the cure was distributed. The plague was stopped. The Threen extinction was prevented. Clickfar woke from stasis to find his world saved. Captain, Hyun will return to the Keltorian-Vosh border with his peacekeeping fleet. Both sides had agreed to an immediate ceasefire the moment they heard humans were coming back. Within 6 months, a peace treaty was negotiated. The war was over. Human trade ships resumed their routes. Food reached hungry worlds. Manufacturing restarted. The shipping lanes were repaired and reopened. The economy began to recover. And in the Assembly Hall, now with new leadership and new rules, Ambassador Deho took his seat. Not in the probationary section, not in the back rows, but at the center table, in one of 3 new seats marked with Earth's symbol. He was the same man who had been laughed at 5 years ago. But the galaxy was not the same, and neither was the assembly. The assembly hall looked different now. The grand chamber still orbited the same neutron star, still showed the galaxy through its transparent dome. But the seating had changed. Where once the elder species sat in elevated positions looking down on younger members, now all seats were level, equal. Ambassador Daho sat in the center section, one hand resting on the smooth surface of the table. To his left sat Ambassador Soman. To his right sat the new human representative from the outer colonies, a woman named Bora. 3 seats. 3 permanent positions on the Security Council. Across from them sat Ambassador Cal Demirithi, who had fought so hard to bring humanity back. The Arcan Sub-Chancellor, now promoted to Full Chancellor, floated in its crystalline matrix nearby. The Vosh representative sat rigid, still unhappy about the changes, but bound by the new charter. The Kaltorian elder, who had once mocked humanity's youth, now sat 2 rows back, no longer in a position of automatic authority. Age alone no longer granted power in the new assembly. Chancellor Kell called the session to order. She had been elected to lead the reformed assembly by a wide margin. Her first speech as chancellor was brief. We gathered today not as elder and younger, not as advanced and primitive, but as equals. The dignity accords are now the foundation of this assembly. Any species that cannot accept this may leave freely, but those who stay must live by these principles. Respect is not optional. The vote to ratify the accords was overwhelming. Only 47 species voted against, and all 47 quietly withdrew from the assembly over the following weeks. They were not missed. The real work began immediately. Dr. Subin stood before the medical council presenting her plague research. Beside her stood Clickfar, the young Threen scientist who had nearly died. Together, they explained the cure and the methodology. The key was understanding that the plague was not one disease, but 3 working together. Subin explained. Each one amplified the others. Treating them separately failed, but treating all 3 simultaneously created a cascade effect that destroyed all of them. Clickfar added, human medical philosophy focuses on systems, not individual symptoms. This approach saved my people. We are incorporating it into all our future research. The presentation lasted 3 hours. At the end, the Keltorian medical director stood and did something that shocked everyone. He bowed to Dr. Subin. I mocked human medicine 5 years ago, he said clearly. I called it adequate for lesser species. I was a fool. Your work has saved billions. You have my gratitude and my apology. Subin accepted both with grace. But afterward, in private, she told Clickfar, I will never forget the ones we could not save. The ones who died during the 5 years we were gone. That blood is on the assembly's hands, not mine. But it still hurts. At the Keltorian Vosh border, Captain Hyungu oversaw the construction of a joint memorial. The monument would honor the 17 billion who died in the war. Both species contributed to the design. The Keltorian general who had dismissed Hyungu 5 years ago came to the dedication ceremony. He was old now, bent with age and grief. I told you once that your contributions were insignificant, the general said to Hyungu. I watched 17 star systems burn because I was wrong. I will carry that shame until I die. Hyungu looked at the endless names carved into the memorial wall. The dead cannot hear your shame, but the living can hear your wisdom. Make sure the next generation learns from this. Make sure they understand what pride costs. The peace treaty between the Keltorians and Vosh was signed on the memorial steps. Both sides agreed to name it the Human Peace, in honor of the mediators who had prevented the war once and could have prevented it again if pride had not sent them away. Back on Earth, Dr. Jiwan released the quantum fold drive technology to the assembly. But but not as a gift. As a licensed technology with strict terms. Humanity developed this during our isolation, she told the Assembly Science Council. It is ours by right. We will share it because we believe in cooperation. But we will not allow it to be taken for granted again. The licensing terms were fair but firm. Every species could use the drive. But they had to acknowledge it was human technology. They had to pay a small licensing fee. And they had to allow human inspectors to ensure it was not being weaponized. Some of the elder species protested. The new Archon Chancellor shut them down immediately. Dr. G1 is being generous. She could keep this technology exclusively for humanity. Instead, she shares it with terms that benefit everyone while respecting her people's work. If you cannot accept such reasonable conditions, then you understand nothing of the new assembly. The technology revolutionized galactic civilization. Travel times dropped by 90%. Distant colonies became accessible. The galaxy effectively shrank. And on every ship using the drive, a small plaque read, "Quantum Fold Technology, developed by Dr. G1 of Earth." 50 years passed. The galaxy transformed. The Terran sphere expanded to 43 systems, all connected by the Quantum Fold network. Human culture spread not through conquest, but through appeal. Other species watched human shows, read human books, listened to human music. They saw a civilization that celebrated creativity without apology. Young members of other species began adopting human customs. Not because they were forced to, but because they wanted to. The humans had something many older species had: forgotten, joy, enthusiasm, a sense of possibility. At the Galactic University, which had relocated to Earth after a competitive bidding process, Ambassador Yunji taught a class on diplomatic history. She was 78 years old now, retired from active service, but still sharp. Her classroom was full of students from 30 different species. They sat together without regard for age of civilization or biological type. A young Threen sat next to a Keltorian. A Vosh student partnered with a human on a group project. This was the new generation. The ones who barely remembered the old assembly. Yunji began her lecture as she always did, with a story. 50 years ago, I stood in the old assembly hall and watched my colleague, Ambassador Deho, present our case for membership. We were proud of what we had accomplished. We believed we had earned respect. She pulled up old footage of that day. The students watched as the young Deho made his presentation. Then they watched the laughter begin. Several students looked uncomfortable. One of the 3 students made a sound of disgust. "They laughed at you," the student buzzed. "How could they laugh at such achievements?" "Because they measured worth by age and origin instead of by deeds and character," Yunji explained. "They forgot that wisdom is not the same as years lived. That being old does not make you right." She showed the next part. The withdrawal. The exodus. The 5 years of separation. "Why did you come back?" A Keltorian student asked. "If I were you, I would have stayed away forever." "Because staying away would have made us like them," Yunji said. "We did not leave because we hated the assembly. We left because we respected ourselves enough to refuse disrespect. But we came back because we were needed. Because people were dying. Because help was the right thing to do, regardless of whether it was deserved." A human student raised her hand. "Professor, do you think the assembly has really changed? Or did they just learn to hide their contempt better?" Yunji smiled. "Look around this classroom. 30 species, learning together, working together. No one sits in a special elevated seat. No one's opinion is valued more because their species is older. You debate with each other as equals." She gestured to the window, where Earth spread out below them. The assembly did not just change. We changed them. And they changed us. 50 years ago, humans were angry and hurt. We wanted to prove we were better. Now we know we do not need to prove anything. We know our worth. That confidence, that certainty, came from walking away when we needed to and coming back when it was right. The class continued. Yoonji talked about the dignity accords, about the reforms, about the new structure of the assembly. She talked about failures and successes, about ongoing challenges and future hopes. At the end, a young Archon student asked the question Yoonji had been waiting for. What is the most important lesson from this history? Yoonji thought for a moment. That civilization is not about technology or age or power. It is about how you treat others, especially those who cannot force you to treat them well. The old assembly was advanced and ancient and powerful, but it was not civilized. Not truly. Civilization requires respect, dignity, and the strength to admit when you are wrong. The class ended. Students filed out, still discussing the lecture. Yoonji packed her materials slowly, her old hands moving carefully. Ambassador Daeho appeared in her doorway. He was 79 now, his hair completely white, but he still served as humanity's chief representative. Still telling them the story, he said with a smile. Someone has to, Yoonji replied. The ones who did not live through it need to understand what we almost lost. What we gained by being willing to walk away. They walked together through the campus. Students from dozens of species hurried past, calling greetings in multiple languages. The university was alive with energy and ideas. Do you ever regret it? Daeho asked. The 5 years we were gone. The people who died while we maintained the silence. Yoonji stopped walking. She looked out at the quad, where a memorial stood. It listed the names of every being who had died during those